Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. I've been really trying to push off getting a new camera, but I think it's time. Might be time to retire this one because it's not doing so great. Hope everyone's doing well. My name's Connor. If you're new, let's learn about Finland, shall we? Subscribe, like, discover Art Nouveau in Helsinki, city of nature, myth, and granite. Let's go. I love seeing how architecture kind of what's the word, like, blends as you move across space in Europe. Like, take France for instance. As you go more northeast in France, it starts to look a bit more German and lowlandy kind of architecture, and then you go from Western Germany towards the east into Czechia, and that has its own thing. And all of the Baltics, not just the Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, but just all the countries around the Baltic Sea seem to have a pretty similar architectural
in Helsinki
style, you know? I think it's cool.
Here we are in Helsinki, where a young generation of architects developed this extraordinary approach to their idea of Art Nouveau. This was Jugendstil, a movement that transformed ordinary buildings into complete works of art. In this film, we step inside the city's most iconic examples, exploring interiors rich with symbolism, craftsmanship, and national pride. As the Art Nouveau style spread across parts of Europe at the end of the 19th century, Finland was still under Russian rule. But a growing national spirit was stirring, and Helsinki sought a new identity. The young architects of Helsinki sought to create something distinctly Finnish. And so, architecture became a canvas, not just for the imagination, it was also political.
Creating your
and
own
to do with
identity.
Independence and pride. And nowhere is this story clearer than in Helsinki's enchanted streets of Katajanokka, where apartment blocks rise like fantastical castles. Together, they form one of the world's most unified and dramatic visions of Art Nouveau. So in a city which quadrupled its size in a matter of years, one of the great architectural problems for Helsinki was residential. The problem was solved by developing whole areas for housing, and the Helsinki population developed these extraordinary apartment blocks. And the blocks themselves became an experiment in the new style. But what's interesting is that there was a very different approach in residential from the commercial buildings that were going up in the centre. And in this building, the Pohjola Insurance Building, we can see a great example, which found beauty in the strength of material, in stone that tells stories. It is important to remember that the Art Nouveau style is not just one look, one visual approach to things.
This is one of the things I'm a bit jealous of European countries and many other countries around the world that are a lot older than the USA. And you have a much more distinct identity. And the USA has an identity. It has its own culture, but it's a big blend of a few cultures. And it's great in its own way, but I can't, reach back into the depth of a more uh hmm, uh distinct. Like, you can go back hundreds of years and you're Finnish, and go back hundreds of years and have German. I know Germany as a nation was only in the late 1800s, but there was still a German identity and a French identity and an English one. And I would like to know how that feels, just to have that your roots, the roots of your tree, of your cultural tree, are deeper and less. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
Art Nouveau itself is really a collection of movements, each one growing up in different areas of Europe, in different cities, and each of those cultures gave Art Nouveau a slightly different look and stretched it in different directions. And in this city, Helsinki, one of the powerful things that comes over is in their use of nature and in their use of mythology and symbolism, and pulling the two together. And there was a volume of poems called the Kalevala, which came right to the fore, right across the arts, in music, in literature, and powerfully in painting, sculpture, and in architecture. And the myths and legends of the Kalevala came to represent the Finnish people. And this building, the Pohjola Building, is covered in the animals and monsters from the Kalevala. As we look at the building,
Wait, the scary music.
it's rather frightening.
Well, it was the music that made it frightening. I wouldn't have thought it was that frightening if you didn't have the, eerie music.
They brought together creatures from the past and fused them into natural forms and brought them together. It's as though the Finnish identity is to do with the forest, inhabited by creatures of all kinds, natural creatures like bears and wolves and owls.
Okay, this one is a bit frightening, actually. Regardless of the music. The frowning, showing of the teeth, the eyes looking. The more I look at it, okay, it is frightening.
Kinds, natural creatures like bears and wolves and owls, but also mythic creatures like trolls and gargoyles. Perhaps one way to understand Finnish Art Nouveau and to get inside how the architects and designers were thinking is in nature and the use of nature. Often very stylized, but as you look at the woodwork here, the top end of the woodwork and the metalwork, it's stylized trees, and frequently the pattern forms come out of their vision of the forest, a stylized forest. And the Pohjola Building, being built quite early on, 1899 to 1901, was one of the early masterpieces of GLS, their greatest architectural practice.
What is it about the eyes to the side? I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted on something that's not about. Well, it is about. It's about
here
a piece of the architecture, but
and the use of
is having eyes to the pupils to the side rather than front. Why does it convey? It's like you're suspicious. So you're looking at something, but you don't want to turn, make it obvious. So you're, anyways, okay.
Out of Pohjola Building, the early masterpieces of GLS, their greatest architectural practice. The trio of Gerselius, Lindgren and Saarinen, known as GLS, defined the movement that will become one of the most influential creative collaborations in Finnish history. But perhaps their most personal creation was Hvitträsk, the studio home they designed for themselves, part workspace, part artistic refuge. It was a manifesto, a living demonstration of how Finnish identity, nature, craftsmanship and modern design could be woven together into something entirely new.
Beautiful.
So while this place feels in many ways quite traditional, it's vernacular, this idea very much comes from the English arts and crafts movement and the idea of the vernacular, of looking at folk art and traditional building and bringing that into the modern age. It's not a great deal of stone here, it's mainly designed out of wood, but overridingly is the idea of Gesamtkunstwerk, a total work of art, whereby you take all the different architectural and design and artistic practices and bring them together. A house is full of wood, metal, stained glass, glass, ceramic, textile, integrated in to create a single interior, the total work of art. They're all directed at solving the problem of what the building has to do. The thing that's interesting about GLS, this practice, is that each building appears to be really very different from the others they did.
So this seems like their kind of play area where they can, you know, fool around a bit more and incorporate things in a way that they wouldn't in other areas in Finland that they're designing. So that's the feeling I'm getting, and from what he's telling me, and it's beautiful. And so there's no giant theme. I guess the theme is that it's full of a bunch of themes. So, if I'm understanding correctly.
For the National Museum, they sought not only to house history, but to make the building become history itself. Rooted in the land, yet looking towards the future, combining craftsmanship with myth and modernity with memory. Across the stone surface, subtle carvings and motifs evoke the mythic imagery of the Kalevala. Animals, plants, and abstract patterns weave through the structure like living symbols. Even inside, high above, the great ceiling frescoes bring myth to life. Scenes from the Kalevala unfold across the vault. Heroes, spirits, forest and skies rendered in colour and movement. The result is both...
That's terrifying. What? Like a harpy?
And skies rendered in colour and movement. The result is both monumental and intimate. A harmony between nature, craftsmanship and myth. This building by Onni Tarjan wasn't just a theatre, it was a cultural symbol, created at a moment when Finnish Jugendstil architects were shaping a new national identity through design. Completed in 1902, is one of the great monuments of Finland's Art Nouveau age. A silhouette that looks more like a fortress of folklore than a theatre. But actually, when you go inside the building, there's another major theme which also reflects the Finnish mentality. Fantastic stained glass. The geometric patterns of the stained glass windows echo Finnish folk art and medieval storytelling. More than decoration, these windows shape the building's atmosphere. Warm, solemn, and quietly theatric. As daylight filters through them, the entire foyer becomes a living artwork. Patterns of colour and texture animate the entrance hall, casting shifting tones across the stone and wood surfaces as the day moves on. The stained glass echoes the ideals of the movement, craftsmanship, myth, and the belief that art should be woven into everyday public life. Another of the great pioneering architects was Lars Sonck, a bold and imaginative architect whose work bridged tradition and modernity. Sonck was fascinated by Finland's vernacular architecture, alive with movement, ornament and expression. The Jugend Hall speaks of movement, the flowing line, the living curve, the artistry of craft. It's a building born from the belief that architecture could be both functional and poetic. Another feature of the work of Lars Sonck, and it shows that he was in tune with the other major architects in Helsinki, is embracing of the idea of Gesamtkunstwerk, a total work of art, where multiple arts are brought together to orchestrate and create the architectural environment. And perhaps
obviously you need the skill to be able to do it, but imagine imagine being one of the people to create the, or not create the identity. The identity is already there. You're portraying the identity of the nation, and you are setting up what millions of future Finns will look around and see as classic Finnish architecture, and you're the ones who get to do that, and that must have felt really awesome.
The single biggest feature in this space is the magnificent mural at the back end of what would have been the foyer of the bank. The mural, painted in 1916, transforms the space from an impressive architectural shell into a living canvas. It connects the viewer to nature whilst being in the heart of the city, and it reminds us that architecture is never just stone and timber. It is a stage for human expression, for culture, for life itself. And in the Jugend Hall, the mural stands as proof that art and architecture together can elevate a space, turning a building into a lasting symbol of the city's soul. As we look around throughout the building, we can see painted ornamentation along walls, under arches, and on the pillars and vaults.
Whenever I look at, brutalist Soviet style architecture, and there are some places in the former Soviet Union, like I hear that St. Petersburg is a beautiful city, and Moscow has some beautiful aspects of it. I'm not saying that the whole country is like this, but it doesn't get rid of my point that when you look at buildings as it's just a structure with a obvious purpose to shelter people for different purposes, right? But if that's the only way you think, then it's going to affect people's mind when they just live in this dreary kind of area. And I don't think you can really put a price tag on enhancing the look of a place, because it's going to have a real effect on how the people feel and then how productive they are. I believe that would be the case, and so that's my point. It's this stuff isn't just to make things look. These have an actual purpose other than just being pretty in the moment.
Animal
if that makes
figures,
sense.
Some comic, some wild, carved in soapstone and granite, deep reliefs. The ceiling vault of the main hall is like a Viking ship turned upside down in its structural inspiration. And Sonck crafts a ceiling.
I can also use my own country as an example too, not just like Soviet blocks, but there's a lot of places in America that are just, they might be functional in some ways, sometimes they're not, but they are not look good.
Like none other for his next masterpiece, the Kallio Church. Sonck designed the interior as a complete artwork. Every lamp, bench and metal detail is part of a unified aesthetic. Carved reliefs line the space, blending the softened curves of Jugendstil with the emerging clarity of Nordic classicism. These motifs reflect Finland's spiritual and natural identity, rendered in a modern, subtly monumental style. The church's rising granite tower, over 60 meters high, is one of Helsinki's most recognizable skyline markers. The heavy, rough-hewn granite exterior ties the building directly to Finland's natural landscape. When Kallio Church opened, it was more than a house of God. It was a declaration that Finland could stand tall and Helsinki's spirit could endure.
I didn't see the bottom at first. What a beautiful building.
His spirit could endure. In this city of islands and forests, where light shifts with the seasons, there stands a building, monumental. The Helsinki Central Railway Station, a living artwork in stone, a landmark that anchors Helsinki's identity. Here, Jugendstil meets granite, light, and the human form in a bold Nordic synthesis. And dominating the skyline is the clock tower, a landmark seen from many parts of the city. Flanking the main entrance are the imposing figures known as the lantern bearers, sculpted by Emil Wikström. Two pairs of powerful male statues hold the spherical lamps, stone men whose stern faces and upright posture seem to guard and guide the travellers. They serve both as ornament and signifier, Art Nouveau's embrace of human form. Simplified, monumental, symbolic. I'm stood now at the entrance of one of the most important buildings in Helsinki, the Grand Central Station. It was designed by Elio Saarinen after he left the practice of GLS, but was finally inaugurated in 1919. So we still see some of those elements from the Art Nouveau years, not least in the use of geometry and a far more geometric structure in the overall design. But as we look at it, we can see other things. Two heads behind me are very much a product of what became known as Egyptomania, the influence of ancient Egypt. But also it's to do with Saarinen moving away from nature. Most of his buildings up to now have been covered in animals and plant forms. This building is void of that. If we go inside this building, we realize that the beautiful themes which are developed outside carry all the way through the interior structure. Stepping inside Helsinki's central railway station is like entering a cathedral of movement and modernity. The first thing visitors notice are the grand spaces, flooded with light from high windows and skylights. Polished granite floors, smooth stone walls, and the carefully proportioned arches give the interior a sense of permanence and solidity, while the soaring ceilings create an atmosphere of openness and anticipation. Every line, every surface communicates order and elegance, guiding travellers naturally through the vast concourse. Walking the halls, one senses Saarinen's vision, a building that is functional, monumental, and yet profoundly welcoming.
I love the wood. I'm not sure what kind of wood this is, but the color in this wood right next to the stone structure here.
Vision, a building that is functional, monumental,
and the brick,
and yet profoundly welcoming. It is a testament to Finland's confidence in its own identity, and a daily reminder that architecture can shape not only a city, but the experience of everyone who passes through it. Across Europe, Art Nouveau ignited a revolution, and here in Helsinki, Finnish architects answered with something altogether different. A wilder, more rugged, more elemental vision. Granite instead of marble, Nordic myth instead of classical allegory, a language of curving forms and national spirit, carved into the very fabric of the city. These buildings remain more than monuments. They are the moment Finland found its voice, when stone, ornament, and imagination combined to declare a new nation to the world. Jugendstil held the past in one hand and the future in the other.
absolutely stunning. I feel like having this beautiful architecture is something that you might not notice every day, and you might not always just, maybe some more than others, just stop and gaze at every beautiful piece of architecture. But it's like it's something that you'll get so used to, and you will notice it immediately and harshly if it's gone. You know, and I think it's sort of a passive buff on the mentality of people living in an area. If stuff around you looks nice, even if it has no obvious practical purpose, it has a lingering effect on everyone. that I think very few people would disagree with. I would love, if you do disagree with me, I'd love to hear it. But it's a great video. Helsinki looks like a beautiful city. And I get quite jealous of European cities like this when I watch videos like this. So there are beautiful parts of America and around where I live, but a lot of it is pretty awful. But great video. Hope everyone's doing well. Would appreciate any comments, and love to hear your thoughts. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye, guys.